Well, I want to welcome everybody to the webinar today. My name is George Fernandez, and I am the Vice President of Practice Management here at Mariner Wealth Advisors. And it's really great to have everybody here. I know everyone has a busy schedule, so it's always great to have as many of you on these calls as possible. If you've been to a Mariner webinar before, you know that what we're bringing to you is just educational content to kind of help simplify things that are going on in your life and bring valuable information to you. So if you've been to a webinar before, welcome back. Thanks for being here again. If this is the first webinar that you've been to, we thank you for taking the time out to be here today. We have a great topic today. Jeff Lanza is going to be speaking in just a few minutes about cybersecurity and cybercrime and how to protect ourselves from that. And so we'll kick that off here in just a couple of minutes. As we kind of kick that off, for those of you who are kind of new to the webinar series, let me just tell you just real quickly who we are. Mariner Wealth Advisors is a wealth management firm. We have clients in all 50 states. We have offices in over 40 locations across the country. And our primary goal in working with clients is have a 360-degree view of everything that's happening in their lives, not just from a financial perspective, but also from a personal perspective, because we know that actually impacts our finances. And so we do focus on that very important thing as we work with our clients. So that means we partner with you to help create strategies, financial strategies for today and for tomorrow. So we want to be flexible about those strategies as we go into the future so they can change and adjust as your lives change and adjust, of course. And above all, what we always come out to be is the advocate for you. That's what we really want to be, is your advocate, because we know that there are a lot of things that are thrown at you throughout your lives, and we want to be there to help you do that. And so a lot of clients have asked us to help them along the way, and a lot of topics we talk about are things like this today. Well, today we're really it's really a great and awesome opportunity for us, because we have as our guest today Jeff Lanza. Jeff, I've heard you speak on more than one occasion over the last few years. And those of you who've not heard the name Jeff Lanza is a former FBI special agent. He has over 20 years of experience investigating cybercrime, corruption, organized crime. And I just imagine the stories that you could tell if we're sitting there having a cocktail one evening, Jeff. I just imagine, which is really interesting. You're going to help us understand how we can protect ourselves, I think, today as we talk about this topic, how to stay safe from keeping our identity safe, keep ourselves safe from cybercrime above all, and what to watch out for, most importantly, because there's a lot of little things out there that we may not really notice, but are really could be places where we can find ourselves getting into trouble. And so that's one of the things that I hope to hear about today as well. But as I mentioned, I've heard Jeff speak on more than one occasion. Jeff, I got to tell you, I would say that just about every time I hear you speak, I hear something new. I haven't quite figured out if that's because I'm not taking good notes or if things are just changing that rapidly that I got to keep up with. It's hard to keep up with everything, but that's why we have you here to help us with that. I am certain, Jeff, that they're going to have questions along the way. I'm going to have everybody put your questions in the Q&A box. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a box there, a selection for Q&A. If you go to that window, and if you have a question, if you'll type it in that window, then we'll get to those later in the program today. I don't know, Jeff, I know I could hear you speak about this for hours. I think we have 45, 50 minutes or so. I'm going to jump in probably toward the end of it. You'll see me pop back up on the screen. When I do that, that'll kind of be our cue to kind of look at some of the questions that we might have. But I'm going to hold all the questions till then, because there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover. You might find some of the questions get answered along the way. And then we want to make sure that we get through as much information as possible. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. You got your slides ready to go, and I think we're all set.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me. Hey, it's great to see so many people here on this webinar, over 80 right now, the last time I checked. So thank you for being here. Welcome to the event today. I spent 20 years with the FBI, and for most of my career, I was involved in white-collar crime. Wait, that doesn't sound just right. I investigated white-collar crime. I wasn't involved in white-collar crime, but two parts of the FBI's white-collar crime program are identity theft and cybercrime. We'll be focusing on those two things today in my presentation. But it's really about how we stay safe from these types of crimes. Right? And sometimes when it comes to that, the national media will ask me to do television interviews. This is a screenshot of me being interviewed on one such show on CNBC. And they asked me on this show about how the hackers commit the crimes that they commit. We'll cover that today and how to stay safe. They also asked me what the motivations were. It's almost always for profit. We can't change that incentive, but here's what we can change: how difficult it is for them to reach that incentive. And that's how we're going to stay safe. So first we'll talk about identity theft, some simple things you can do to keep your identity safe. And then we'll get into cybercrime. I'll show you the tricks the criminals use to try to deceive us. And then I will talk about how to stay safe from those tricks. And then a couple things you can do to keep your computer safe. Now, there is a handout that goes with this presentation. I'm not sure if you have this yet, but you will get it for sure. There's 5 pages. I know it seems like a lot, but the first page is an executive summary. That's what you're looking at here. And then the next 2 pages are on identity theft prevention. And then the final 2 pages are on cybercrime prevention. So everything we're talking about today is on this handout. It's a great permanent resource for today's presentation. All right, let's get right into it. Again, welcome to the presentation. Let's talk about how to keep your identity safe, and I will try to get to all your questions at the end of the presentation as time permits. First of all, creating an online Social Security account is an important thing to do because this prevents criminals from creating one using a stolen identity. We almost have to conclude that our Social Security number is out there in the hands of a criminal. There's been so many breaches involving Social Security numbers, and one of the things they can do with that is sign up for Social Security benefits using a victim's identity. That's if you're 62 or older. They can go to this site at ssa.gov and sign up at this page and start having your benefits sent to their bank account. Now, you can prevent this easily from happening if you have an account yourself. So setting up your online account is easy to do at ssa.gov. And even if you're younger than 62, there's lots of benefits to having what's called your My Social Security account. Not the least of which is you won't have to go to a Social Security office for virtually anything, but also you get your statements online now. They don't mail those statements to you anymore about your future Social Security benefits. So you can track those online through this account. So set this account up at any age, but particularly if you're 62 or older, because that keeps you safe from someone getting benefits using your identity. It's really easy to do. Now, if you're working with George already, you know that he knows a lot about Social Security, and he talks to you about that as part of retirement planning. But for fraud prevention, sign up for this account. It's a great thing to do. Second thing you should do is to freeze your credit reports. And again, most likely our Social Security number is out there. We've had the Equifax breach. We've had major breaches involving Social Security numbers. So why don't we freeze our credit reports to stay safe from criminals opening new credit card accounts using your identity. See, they can't do that if your credit report is frozen because your credit history is not released to the credit card company. So a criminal gets stopped right there. They can't get loans in your name or open up accounts in your name if your credit reports are frozen. It's really easy to freeze your credit reports. On my handout, you'll see information about the credit reporting agencies. You have to freeze all 4 of them independently. You can't freeze one and expect them all to be frozen. You have to freeze every single one independently, but I'll show you how to do that in a second. And you know, you're probably thinking right now, Jeff, wait a minute, there's 4 credit reporting agencies? Most people have heard of the big 3. The 4th one, called Innovis, let's not leave that one unprotected. So if we're going to freeze our credit reports, let's freeze all 4 of our credit reports. Now I'll show you how to do one, just to show you how easy it is. If you go to TransUnion's site, I did this recently as an example, just to show you how easy it is. So I know this is very current. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into their services. You'll be able to find it once you get there. It's very easy. And then you'll click on Freeze Your Credit Report right here. And then you'll come to this page. And then you'll scroll down a little bit on the left. But I'm just giving you an example because it's to show you that it's pretty simple. They've made it that way because they want people to stay protected. So you're going to add a freeze right there. Now, a couple things about that. Freezing your credit reports, remember, helps prevent fraud. You have to do it at 4 separate agencies, not just one. All 4 have to be protected. And you can freeze anytime for free. It doesn't cost any money to freeze your credit reports, and it doesn't affect your current credit card relationships or your credit scores. It also is easy to lift the freeze for your credit report. So if you need to get credit checked, you're applying for a home refinance, you're getting a car loan, you're getting a new credit card, you can lift the freeze for the credit reporting agency that's being used to check your credit and then freeze that again. That's easy to do right back at this site. And then one more thing about freezes, that is you can protect minors and others in your family, but particularly minors can be victimized by identity theft. And if that happens, they can be victims for years. So federal law recognizes this risk and allows a parent to create a credit report for a minor, because they shouldn't have them. You create it, and then you can freeze it at the same time. That keeps them safe from fraud. So consider doing that for kids in your family as well, to protect them. So the third thing in this category is more of an ongoing thing, and that is to protect the paper in your life. We'll talk about your mail and your trash, and then we're going to get into the exciting world of cybercrime. So first, let's talk about protecting your mail. If you have a mailbox like this at your house, please don't ever do this. And you know what I mean. Don't mix pansies with salvia. They just don't go well together at all. And what I'm talking about, of course, is the flag. If you have outgoing mail that's sensitive, take it to the post office and inside a location, not in the blue boxes. Mail can be stolen from those too. I could show you that at another time, how criminals can get into blue boxes. But particularly what the criminals look for are checks. Don't put checks into the mail system through your mailbox like this. They could be washed off and criminals will write the check out to themselves, and that leaves you holding the bag. So we're going to prevent this from happening by taking checks to the post office, or even better, pay bills online. It's better than putting checks through the mail system. When you do write checks, use gel pens. It's more secure than using a ballpoint ink, as gel pens can't be washed off as easily. But still, take them to the post office or pay bills online. Now, when you shred your documents before they go out to the trash, anything sensitive should be shredded, not with a strip cut shredder like Dwight's using. That might be okay for credit cards, but it's not okay for documents that have sensitive information on them. Use a secure shredder. When I talk about sensitive information, I'm talking about anything beyond your name and address. You know, I don't think your name and address alone is sensitive, but anything more than that, of course, social security numbers, the most sensitive of all, and other information should be shredded. And I'm going to electronically shred this document to show you how important it is to shred things with a secure shredder. So while you're thinking about documents, also consider this. How about getting rid of documents? Now, I don't mean getting rid of them. How about just not getting them at all? And that would mean signing up for e-delivery of statements. Now, a lot of people have reluctance to do this, but it's actually more secure because the documents are not being delivered through the mail, where they can be stolen, and even stolen from incoming mail and stolen from trash if they're not shredded properly. So e-delivery is more than just about going green. It's also about securing your documents and fraud prevention. Now, we've talked about a lot so far, right? Keeping your identity safe by creating your online Social Security account, freezing your credit reports, and also protecting the paper in your life. You've gone a long way to keeping safe from fraud if you've done these things, and you'll see that on the handout in more detail. Let's move on now and talk about some of the tricks the criminals use to try to deceive us and what to look out for. But before I do, I'd like to pause this presentation for just a minute. George said that he's seen me present in person, and when I do in-person events, people often come up to me, and I hope I'll do that again sometime, but they'll come up to me and say, "Hey, Jeff, when did you join the FBI?" And I give them this answer. I did 1988. And actually, I don't whip out a picture when I see him in person, but I'm going to show you this picture. I joined the FBI in 1988. And that's me back then. Getting my credentials in Quantico, Virginia, where all agents go to be trained. Over 33 years ago, but it's not some undercover guy going into the FBI with the dark hair and the mustache there. That's me. And I would never make a good undercover agent, which is why I never went into those type of jobs. But anyway, that's me in 1988. But anyway, and then people often ask, so Jeff, why did you join the FBI? And I could trace that interest back to television. And what I mean by that is when I was growing up in my family, I come from a big Italian family. There were 5 boys in my family. And every Christmas, we had a tradition in my family. We sat around the TV and we watched a movie. Now, the movie that we watched in my family, it taught me about life and loyalty and how business should be conducted. And if you've seen this movie on Christmas Day, It's a Wonderful Life, that's a good movie. But that's not the movie that my family watched on Christmas Day. No, it was actually The Godfather that we watched on Christmas Day that taught me about life, loyalty, and how business should be conducted. And I know it's kind of weird, but that got me interested in the mob. Now, not joining the mob, but investigating the mob. So hence, I became an FBI agent. And lo and behold, I got sent to Kansas City, where I was assigned to a mob case. Kansas City had a very active organized crime family when I got here, and 2 mobsters were talking on the phone. Now, there's a lesson to this, so watch what happens next. As these 2 mobsters talk on the phone, Tony gets a call from Joe. As we listen to the call, Tony says, Joe, I'm really glad you called. Joe says, yeah, why? And Tony goes, I got a little problem. I think the FBI is tapping my phone. And Joe goes, well, what are you going to do about it? And Tony goes, well, I got a new number. So watch this. Lacking any common sense, Joe goes, okay, good. Give me the number. Now, Tony gets a little common sense. He says, I better not give it to you on the phone. I'll meet you for lunch and I'll give it to you then. And Joe says, well, I can't meet you for lunch. Tony says, okay, I'll give you the number on the phone now, but I'll give it to you backwards. So he proceeded to give him these 7 digits in reverse order. What did the FBI do? We got our best cryptologist on that one right away. We had the number figured out in record time. It only took us 6 months with all the powerful computers we had back in 1988. But I use this example more than just to tell you a funny story, but also to illustrate a very key point. How important is common sense in everyday life? And when it comes to scams, it's important too. The criminals are trying to manipulate our emotions, whether it's a computer scam, a phone scam. They want us to make us react emotionally when we might make bad decisions. And that's the basis of their tricks. So let's look at some of those tricks and how they do that and what we can do to stay safe. I'll start with COVID scams. The criminals don't lay low during COVID. They've stepped up their act and they're trying to deceive us, knowing that we're home more, we're answering the phone more, we're on the computer more. And it starts with phone calls. Sometimes your caller ID may not indicate the caller, but sometimes it may look like the caller is coming from someone in your neighborhood based on the digits. And it may even look like it's coming from an important agency. We can't believe our caller ID because there's technology that allows criminals to spoof it. You may think the call's coming from someone that's important to talk to or someone that you know. The rule is we never give information to people who call us on the phone, right? Calling you on the phone, don't give them information in an unsolicited phone calls to try to prevent fraud where they're stealing your identity or maybe get access to your bank account. Now let's go to my blackboard here for a minute. Robocalls are at an all-time high. In fact, in March of this year, last month, robocalls hit a record volume in 1 month, and that's a lot of calls per day. When you look at the numbers, it's 200 million per day in the United States. And you throw on top of that text messages, which I'll cover in a second. You can't stop robocalls very easily. There are a couple of apps and a couple of things you might consider that are listed on my handout about robocall technology that will help stop some of those. You can take a look at that. It's not going to stop everything, but the thing is, we just keep this general rule in mind. If people call you on the phone, whether it's a robocall initiated call where they turns to a real person, or then you get a call directly from a real person, we don't give information to people who call you on the phone. Text messages can be fraudulent as well. 7 billion text messages went out by scammers in March as well, and they're looking to get our information around COVID, trying to elicit an emotional reaction. We don't give information to people who call you or people who respond or send you text messages in an unsolicited way. Sometimes the criminals try to communicate by using email. I doubt the Treasury Department is communicating from a Gmail account and asking you in a non-secure email, in this real example, right, for your personal identification, namely your social security number, which can be used to steal your identity, or your routine number. I think they mean routing number, but sometimes these emails don't have mistakes. So that's not always the telltale sign of a scam. The rule is we don't give information to people who contact us in an unsolicited way, even through emails. Now, sometimes the emails contain attachments. The government's not sending out emails that have attachments in them unsolicited. If you get those emails, don't click on the attachment. It could put malicious software on your computer. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. Here's a question for you to ponder. Are there more Elvis impersonators in the world or IRS website impersonators? If you answered Elvis, you were right by a long margin. But the truth is, the IRS has told us that there are 15,000 fake websites online designed to look like the IRS. So people may mistakenly go there and provide personal information while they're checking on a tax refund during this time of year, or maybe even the stimulus payments as well. If you want to make sure you're on the right site, in the example of the IRS, always click on the lock after you notice the lock. If there's not one there, then you know it's not secure, so don't click on that lock. Don't go to that site. But if there is a lock, here's what you do. Click on it, and you will get a drop down that tells you a third party has verified the authenticity of this site. So you know you're in the right place because the third party tells us that's where the site has been registered to. So you know that is actually the IRS site. Clicking on the lock helps reveal that information. Now, beyond COVID scams, there's a lot of other things that criminals are doing to try to deceive us. So one of the things they try to do is take over our accounts. And as the term implies, that's when a criminal gets access to our online email accounts, bank accounts, and Amazon accounts, for example. Let's see how they do that. So one way is by putting malicious software on our computer. That's where the word malware comes from. And if you got an email that looked like it was coming from the Internal Revenue Service, you know, you might have an emotional reaction. Now, just opening that email doesn't harm your computer. And if you think about this doesn't make sense already, because if the IRS thinks you owe them money, they're going to send you a letter first, not an email. So this already doesn't make sense. But what the criminal wants you to do is have an emotional reaction and click on that attachment. The word malware is derived from two terms, malicious software, with the operative term being malicious. The criminals want you to click on that so it downloads this malicious software on your computer. Now, you may not even know that it's on your computer. And in the background, that malware then watches what you type in on your keyboard and sends those keystrokes to the criminal. So later on, they'll be able to log into your accounts potentially if you use that same computer where you downloaded the malware. Now, if this happens, it's really serious, but it's easy to prevent. So on emails that you get from unknown senders or suspicious senders or ones that don't make sense, just don't click on the link or an attachment in that email. That will keep us safe from this particular problem. There's one more thing you can do, and remember this, not clicking on a lock. In this case, we're going to hover. Hover means holding your mouse over the sender, and you get a reveal of who the true sender is. It's not from the IRS, it's from someone with a Gmail account, another indication of fraud. So stay safe from this trick. Don't click on attachments or links in emails from unknown senders. Hover over the sender to see who the real sender is. Now, I showed this image a second ago of an individual that kind of represents an unknown criminal. And I use that because most of the time, these criminals will never be caught by the FBI, unfortunately. They're in foreign countries, and many of those countries don't extradite them to the United States, even if they are identified. So, but one person was identified, and this person did create a piece of malware known as the Cronus malware. They named him after mythological Greek figures, go figure, but many examples of that. Anyway, he was identified by the FBI. He created a form of malware that stole millions from businesses, and he was wanted by the FBI. There was a warrant for his arrest, but he wasn't going to be extradited to the United States. It was clear that was not going to happen. Surprisingly, he came to the United States to attend, I'm not making this up, a hacker conference in 2017. That's right, hackers have conferences too. And he was there. He's a hacker. Why not attend the conference? Anyway, he's there, and the FBI arrests him as he tries to leave the Las Vegas airport after 4 days at the conference. And they picked him up, they arrested him, and they questioned him. Now, when you question someone who's in custody, you have to advise them of their rights, right? They don't have their right to remain silent. You've probably seen that on TV, right? They advised him of his rights, and he still talked to the FBI. He waived his rights. And later on, he tried to get that statement thrown out of court. He told the judge he couldn't waive his rights. Why? Because he had a terrible hangover. He couldn't waive his rights because he was hungover so bad he wasn't capable. A judge had heard none of it and said, no, the statement stands. And I tell you the story because the FBI got a lot of information about what he did, but also what other criminals are doing to try to take over our accounts. Now, here's a second example of how they might do that. It's from an email that contains a link. Now, this is a real example. I like to use those in my presentations. It had a bank name in it. You'd recognize the bank, the big bank. I've taken that out. I don't think they want to be in my email. Excuse me, in my example. But I'll cut and paste the generic one in to show you how easy it is for criminals to make things look so real, right? So here we have an email that contains a link that's going to send you to a supposed bank account. How do they get you to click on that link? Emotions, right? At the very bottom, they're going to pay you money to fill out a survey. That's just a ruse to get you to click on this link. Now, looking at the link, it may look okay, but if you hover over it, you'll see it's not okay. Hover to discover. Always do that, not just here, but in any example or in any email where there's a link, you can hover over it and you'll be able to see the site you're really going to be sent to, where that link is really going to, and that's not the bank site. You can tell that immediately by hovering. So there's also two letters which indicate a foreign country is where that website is located. So I don't think your bank or my bank is hosting websites in the Ukraine. If you see two letters before the single slash, That indicates that website is not even in the United States. No, another indication of potential fraud. So let's get back to the trick. The criminal wants you to click on that link. Where do you think it's going to send you? To a phony login page. Criminals set this up to look like the real thing, hoping people will put in their username or password, and the criminal will try to log into their bank account. Now, most banks have wised up about this. They're not going to let somebody log into your bank account from a foreign country very easily. But because much money's been stolen, we still have to be careful, and banks have to be careful. But our I guess prevention is very simple. We're not going to log in to a bank account through a link. We're always going to go there directly, just to make sure we're going to keep online banking secure from our end, and the bank does their checking on their end as well. But in the FBI, we always had backups for everything, just in case something went wrong. And a backup, in this case, is to set alerts on your financial accounts. Wherever you have money, you have the ability to set an alert. If money changes hands, if it's moving from one place to another, you can be notified immediately through text messaging. And if it's not legitimate, you can call the bank right away, and you can get fraudulent charges reversed if you call quickly enough, and then also prevent further fraud. Setting up alerts on financial accounts is a really important thing to do, and it's nice to have as a backup just in case something happens. Now, we're going to keep online banking secure. What about mobile banking? A lot of people think your small device that you carry around with you is less secure than the computer. The opposite is true. The mobile devices, those apps, are very secure. They're authenticated. They have lots of layers of security. And the main layer that we're responsible for as users of mobile apps is using the passcode on our phone, right? Using facial recognition or fingerprints to help authenticate ourselves, so the apps can be used safely and the information on the phone is protected. Very important to use the passcode on your phone. Now, suppose you get a text message that looks like it's coming from a financial institution. Should you call that number? Not necessarily. In fact, it may be a trick. So always call the number, in this case, on the back of your credit card. You're calling the right people. If there is an issue, you can talk about it. Sometimes the criminals want us to log in on our mobile devices, but if you clicked on that link, that's going to send you to the browser on your phone, not the app, right? And this one is a real example. If you look very closely at it, the criminal's trying to deceive us. It's not even a .com address, it's CORN. Criminals have set up a website that looks like a bank site. I've taken out the real bank name here, but it's a .CORN, and that's only going to send you, if you didn't notice that, to the browser on your phone. You're not going to log in through the browser. You want to use the app anyway. So if you clicked on that link, it would send you to, again, that lookalike login page that may look like a bank login page. The criminal's hoping you'll log in there because that would provide them with your username or password, not through a computer this time, but through your phone. All right, so you're going to use the app instead. If you use the bank app, you're going to the right place. Now, speaking of phones, let's say we're looking at an email on a phone. Again, a real example. And here's an email that looked like it was coming from PayPal. Of course, there's a nice link there. And I wanted to see where that was going to send me, but you don't have a mouse on a phone. So what you'll do for hovering is you can't hover, but you press and hold, and that's the equivalent of hovering on a mobile device. So pressing and holding reveals where this site is going to take you. And that's not PayPal's site. That's a site in another country. How do I know that? Look for those two-letter codes. .ac indicates a foreign country is where that website is being hosted. It's not PayPal's site, obviously. But I wanted to see what .ac was. I've never heard of that one before. And here's a clue. It's not Atlantic City. It's actually the Ascension Island. Ascension Island is 1,000 miles off the coast of Africa, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Only 500 people live there. And one person, at least in that country, was trying to steal my PayPal credentials with this email. That phishing email looked like it was coming from PayPal. So those two-letter codes help reveal that. And remember, pressing and holding on the phone is the equivalent of hovering on a computer with a mouse. Now let's talk about email accounts, because they can be taken over too. And if they are taken over, the criminals can do a lot of damage. One way that criminals try to do this is by sending phishing emails that look like they're coming from Yahoo or Google or any email provider for that matter. And it's always going to be something emotional in this email that is used to try to elicit our reaction, right? There's a problem with your email account. There's always going to be a link in there that's designed for criminals to get our login credentials for our email account. Now, if you clicked on that link, it would send you to a fake login page for whatever email account they're trying to steal your credentials for. right? And it could be Gmail or Yahoo or any other one. Now, I'll show you what happens if a victim puts their credentials in there in just a second. But what would happen? But before I do that, I want to just show you to make sure you log in the right place. So let's say you have a Gmail account. Lots of people use Gmail. All right, so you may go there every day to get to the right place. You might just Google Gmail, and that's one way to get to a place. But here's the thing: once you get there, save it as a bookmark in your browser. Easy enough to do, so you can go there every time through the browser bookmark. You know you're going to be in the right place. So you don't have to search for things or click on links to get to things and maybe end up in the wrong place. Always use strong passwords to protect your email account. That's really, really important. A lot of people think your email account is less sensitive, so you don't need a strong password. You want something you can remember. That's easy. That's not true. It's one of the most sensitive accounts we have. We'll see that in a second. And you should also use multi-factor authentication to keep your email account safe. Now, multi-factor authentication should definitely be used for your financial accounts, but email accounts as well because of its sensitivity, the sensitivity of the email accounts. So when you log into your email account, you're going to use a password, but also a PIN code that's sent to your phone. Now, this is very easy to set up. If you just go to the help section of your email provider, you'll be able to search for multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. It's also called. We'll show you how to set this up. The person that's trying to hack into your account 6,000 miles away or 6 miles away, they don't have your phone. They can't log in. And that's why this works so well to prevent fraud. Now, let's go back to this example. What would happen if someone tried to or got access to your email account? Let's use an example. Let's say a guy named Mike Smith is victimized by this. So Mike puts his credentials in there. Now the criminal has access to Mike's email account. What are they going to do with that? Well, they first may see if those same credentials work on Amazon. So maybe they'll put the username in there and they work. Except that Mike uses a different password for Amazon than he uses for his email account. So they can't get in directly. But because they have access to Mike's email account, they can simply say forgot password, and now they get a password reset link set to Mike's email account, and they can simply reset the password, order things on Amazon, and delete the verification emails about the orders that they make. Mike never knows about it until the damage has gone on to a second account based on just the one email account being hacked to begin with. All right, so it starts out with the email account and it can lead to a lot more, which is the reason why we need to protect our email accounts. Especially important to do that. Now, then they go after Mike's contacts. Hey, have you ever got an email that looks like it's coming from one of your friends? And you might be wondering, why did my friend send me this weird looking link? Well, your friend didn't send it to you. Someone who hijacked their email account sent it to you. Now, why would they do that though? What purpose would that serve? Well, maybe they're trying to spread malware to your computer through your friend's email account. Maybe they're trying to get you to go to a fake login page for one of your other accounts that you have, or maybe they're trying to hold your computer hostage. They'll ask for a ransom to unlock your computer. That's called ransomware. We'll talk more about that later. These things can even happen if you in emails that you get from people you know, if we click on those links. So just be careful, especially if it takes this format. Even if we get an email from someone that we've dealt with before, and we know their email account could have been hijacked. They're not done with Mike's email account yet, though. So now they're going to go after his money. They're going to see who his financial advisor is, right? And they can do that easily in his through his email account by searching in emails, but they can also do it in his contacts. And Mike has an email contact named Mary Jones, who happens to be the financial advisor, and they've communicated a lot. So the criminal has lots of homework to do. They can read through the emails and then craft something up to try to convince Mary to send a wire transfer to the criminal's bank account, thinking it's going to Mike. And how would Mike, this has got to be Mike, because I have all this information in this email. He knows all about my family, but they've read the past emails. Now, so they know about that. Now, Mary's not going to be fooled. Mary's smart enough, and George is not going to be fooled by this. You know, George, who introduced me today, he's been educated about this, and he knows about this trick. He's got your back. He's watching your assets. He's not going to wire money based on an email instruction, right? So, and that's a good lesson for all of us, right? If we are asked to wire money based on an email instruction, we're not going to do it. We're going to call up and get a verbal, just like George would. That brings you to my next point. Wire transfer fraud. It's a significant problem today, and it starts when the email account of a business has been hijacked. Mostly real estate companies, because those are people or companies that have access to everyone who's getting ready to buy a house in their email communications, right? So they're going to target those people for real estate wire transfer fraud. Now, it's a big problem today. The last FBI report out on this just came out in March. Lots of money lost, lots of victims. And what you're seeing on the screen are 4 examples of people that have lost money, that have not been able to recover that money because they wired it to a criminal based on an email instruction, thinking it was going to a legitimate organization to close on their house at an emotional time when they're getting ready to buy a house. So the rule is we don't let that happen to us or your family members or friends, right? Every time you're wiring money based on an email instruction, if that ever happens in your life, right? Notice the email instructions in an email and do not send the money based on those instructions. Call a number you know to be for that organization or person, and not a number that's in the email that could be part of the trick. And again, tell other people about this too. It's a big problem today. You saw the numbers. You can literally save people thousands of dollars based on this trick alone. All right, the third part of my presentation, we are right on time here, and we're going to now talk about protecting your computer, and just 3 things here for you to help keep your computer safe. First thing is beware of pop-ups. Now, pop-ups serve a purpose like phone calls and text messages and emails, but they could be fraudulent as well. If you get a pop-up that you weren't expecting, it's unsolicited, that has an emotional component to it like this, don't click on Protect Now, don't click on the X. You could put malware on your computer. This is a trick that's designed to do that. So you might be wondering, Jeff, I got this pop-up on my screen. How do I get out of it if I can't click on the X? That's where the handout comes in. So on the handout that you will get or may have already, you'll see right on the first page, this is how important it is. You hold down 3 keys on your keyboard, right? And whether you have a Windows or a Mac, you hold down those keys and that brings up a task manager. Let's go back to that pop-up. Well, there it is. And we hold down those keys, you see this pop and you go, I'm not clicking on that, right? And then you open up hit the keys, and there you can see some programs that are running on your computer. Which one do you think is generating that pop-up, right? It's not Adobe, it's not Chrome, it's not Microsoft, it's probably this one. So you highlight that, end task, pop-up will disappear from your screen, and that's the best way to get out of any pop-up that's come up that looks like that without clicking anywhere in that pop-up. Sometimes the pop-ups want you to call the number. Oh, this is huge today. In fact, I'm looking at right now, right on my table here, I have the AARP bulletin. I wish I wasn't old enough to get the AARP bulletin, but I do. And just this day, today when it arrived, they have a big story on fraud, and one of them is tech support scams, right? And I've been talking about this for a while, but the criminals, they know we're at home more, they know we're online more, they're doing things to try to deceive us. They're putting links out there, maybe on Facebook, where it's like, hey, see this great video. You're not gonna believe what you're gonna see. You click on it, and then you come to a web page that asks you to call a number because they've discovered a problem in your computer. That's the trick to get you to call that number. And they generally want you to give them remote access. Don't do it in this context. They will steal information from your computer, put malware on your computer. Lots of bad things can happen if you give some remote access based on a pop-up like this. Right? And they also want money, right? It may be a wire transfer of money. It could also be a gift card. If you heard the term gift card in response to some online communication, don't do it. Another big red flag for fraud. More about gift cards in just a second. Sometimes they want you to send money to unlock your computer because the FBI is involved. Are you really? You think the FBI is wanting you to send money to them via gift card to unlock your computer? Listen, I worked for the FBI for 20 years. I only asked for cash to unlock people's computers. I had to cash in small bills and non-sequential serial numbers. That was my MO as an FBI agent. Anyway, on a more serious note, wire fraud and gift card fraud are huge today, and they prey on emotions. It could be a romance scam. Watch out for those. Romance scams begin in legitimate sites, potentially, where someone has lost a spouse and maybe they're out there trying to find someone to talk to, and then they want you to move off the site because those sites can be monitored for people trying to victimize others. Anytime anyone asks you to wire money or send a gift card to them that you met online, it's a scam. More about that on the FTC website. That's the Federal Trade Commission. You can go there and learn more about these type of scams involving romance. Be careful. They also prey on fear, another emotion, right? Something's wrong, they're going to fix it for you, send a gift card or wire money. They also prey on greed. Something happened that's good, but to get the money, right, you need to pay money to get it. That doesn't make sense already. But again, it's something where they're trying to elicit that emotional reaction. Now, what's a 419 fraud? That's the old Nigerian scams. They used to come by letter. You still see those in emails. I thought this one you might find interesting. It was about a Nigerian that was trapped on a Soviet space station for over 30 years. In fact, it's still there apparently, and he needs money to help launch a rescue mission. Really? With the instant news that we get today, we know immediately when anything happens in the world on our phone, the instant it happens pretty much. And we never heard about a Nigerian astronaut stuck on a Soviet space station for the past 31 years. They get this ridiculous, but some are more serious. Keep your guard up. People can be victimized, even if you think you can't, not for scams like this, but others that may be used to try to deceive us. Be careful and never wire money or send gift cards to anyone that you in response to something that's been done online. Now, should you unsubscribe from emails like that? I say unsubscribe from emails that you get from places you've done business with. You bought stuff at the local department store online. Of course, you have to give them the email address. They want you to buy more stuff. They send you more emails. You can unsubscribe safely. Federal law says they have to take you off their list. But if you're getting spam or Nigerian letters, don't send me these anymore. I'm not going to respond to this, right? Because that validates your email address to them, and they'll send it to their friends and try a different pitch on you, right? So never unsubscribe or respond to spam. Send those to your spam folder. You'll get less spam if you do that. Now, in this category, I also want to talk about updating your computer and backing up. Updating first. So here's your desktop computer. If you click into the settings, which is in the bottom left-hand corner, Windows, in a Windows system, Macs work about the same way. Go into your settings and just check on how recent your software has been updated. You do that right here in Update and Security. You just want your computer to be up to date, because if you want to be the safest online, then you want to have the latest operating system. Sometimes we click in the wrong place. It can happen to anyone. And then your computer sometimes has your back. It says, hey, we're watching what you're doing. We saw something weird. We're not letting it go on your computer. But they can only do that if they know about the threats. They'll know about more threats if you have the latest operating system. Keep it updated. That applies to antivirus software and to your mobile devices as well. Now, while you're in that section, check on your backups. If there's one thing people are complacent about, is how we back up our important files. Sometimes people don't do it at all. And in the event of a disaster, you could lose important information. One disaster is a ransomware attack. Now, let me use this example to go just to help illustrate this point. I've always wanted to use this term. Here's the backup area I was talking about. 7 years ago. I've always wanted to say that in a speech. Yeah, I could do the rest of the Gettysburg Address in about 2 minutes if you want. But anyway, 87 years ago, in 1934, criminals used to kidnap people. That's right here in Kansas City, where I live. They had a ransom note that's at the National Archives here that they used to use to kidnap people. You just had to fill in the blank if you were a criminal, right? Don't call police. You'll never see blank alive again. Right, just fill the name of your victim. But the criminals today just kind of recycle the old technique. They will kidnap files in our computer. How does it happen? We click in the wrong place, right? We clicked on something we shouldn't have. Downloads malware specifically designed to encrypt your files. They want money to unencrypt them, right? And don't call the FBI, don't call police. They can't help you. So basically it's the same thing. But we'll never have to pay a ransom, even if we have clicked in the wrong place, if we have a backup. So you have your current files that you work with on your computer. That's your first copy of your files. Make another copy, put it on a hard drive, disconnect the hard drive, and when you're not using it, right, just take it off, put it in a drawer, and you'll be able to recover from that hard drive if something should happen. You can also put a third copy of your files in the cloud, and you can recover from that in the event something else goes wrong. So you'll be able to recover from one or maybe more than one place. Good idea to have these backups. And if we're careful where we click, we should never have to be victim of a ransomware attack to begin with, but just in case, we'll have a backup. All right, last part of my presentation, my favorite part. This is, I like this because we can be creative in how we create passphrases. No one likes passwords, and we're going to replace passwords. That's my recommendation. Use passphrases instead. First of all, they solve two problems, right? The problem of brute force hacking. If you have a weak password, criminals can guess it with a computer and powerful software. Second of all, if you use the same password for different sites, right? Criminals can get it in one site and take those credentials and put them in another site, and now they victimize you for a second site. We talked about that a little bit already. That's called credential stuffing. But passphrases, 2-for-1 special, solve both these problems. You can't do brute force. You can't do credential stuffing because each passphrase is going to be strong and unique. So let's look at what people are doing with passwords. We'll go to my whiteboard this time. Most common passwords in the United States are these. Criminals know about these because they're published every year. And listen, I like to think of it this way. Let's say you were camping. You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the other campers, right? We do that with strong passwords. All right, so let's say you're using strong passwords. Are you using unique strong passwords, though, for each one of your accounts? A lot of people don't want to come up with this complexity for every account, so we recycle passwords. I can't see you, but if you raise your hand, if you do this, raise your hand if you recycle passwords for all your accounts. Yeah. And if you're not raising your hand, you're a liar because we all do this, right? And what we want to do is get away from this because credential stuffing can happen. Remember Mike, I told you about him earlier in the presentation, right? They got his password from a Gmail hack, right? They put it into his credit card site and they got access to that. Now, this exact same thing happened. This is an example in Kansas City where I worked as an agent, dozens of victims, thousands of dollars in losses, all because people used the same passwords for the different sites. Let's not do that. Let's use passphrases. And here's where the creativity comes in because you can make a passphrase unique for each site based on an attribute of that site. So here's how you do it. You're on Amazon, you need to create a passphrase. All right, what's a good passphrase for Amazon? What's unique about Amazon? They deliver things in pretty quickly, right? Day, 2 day, 1 day, sometimes same day. I think of it this way. They're moving towards free delivery yesterday, where you order things and you don't even order them. You get it before you order them. Yeah. So that'd be my passphrase for Amazon, right? So this is how you come up with a passphrase, something unique about the site, easy to come up with, easy to remember. And as long as it's 12 characters in length, which this is, it's super strong, and you have everything you need to stay safe against brute force and credential stuffing, all right, in that passphrase. Now, some accounts won't accept that. So let's try my Social Security. What's unique about my Social Security? How about this? They have a lot of money waiting for us, we hope. So how about this? Show me the money. That's a good one for Social Security. They won't accept that because they want the complexity. They got the old standards there. So that's okay. We can still have a passphrase, make the S a capital, make the O a 0, put a $sign at the end. We're still having a passphrase, but we meet their standards for complexity. See, you'll run up against this and you can use this technique if you want. And should you store your passphrases in the cloud or on your devices? I say it's okay, but there's a couple better things here. And I will suggest from my handout, you will see password or passphrase managers. There's some good ones listed on my handout. They're considered to be reliable and secure. And in the second paragraph there, you will also see another option. That's storing passphrases on your mobile device. Now, how is that secure? Let me show you. So open up a note, type in all your passphrases on a note. Whether you have a an Apple or an Android device. There's 2 of them I talked about. Oh, here's another one. I like this for your bank account. If I were a rich man, I like that. But you might want to even make it longer because it is a bank account. So we're going to add in some more lyrics from Fiddler on the Roof. And you can sing the song if you want. And anyway, that's super long and you can use that for your bank account if you want. But how do you secure the note? See that little circle with the dots in it? Click on that. Hit lock, and you'll assign a password to that note, and that'll lock that down. And no one can get access to that note without what you just typed in to lock it, including you. So don't forget about what you just typed in. All right, that's another way to save passphrases. They'll be with you all the time. All right, so I feel like in the time I have left, is necessary to summarize my key points, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. George, bear with me for a minute while I summarize. Creating your online Social Security account, very important to do to prevent Social Security benefits fraud. Freeze all of your credit reports. That keeps you safe from new accounts from being opened in your name. Don't forget about minors in your family. Watch out for fake phone calls. Don't give information to people who call you on the phone. Protect your mail and protect your trash. Better yet, get less mail, less trash. Sign up for e-delivery of your statements, less to worry about. Watch out for attachments in emails from unknown or suspicious senders. Don't click on those attachments. Don't log into your email accounts through a link. Bank accounts the same way. And then also sign up for alerts so you know when money moves. Right? Always wire verify wire transfer frauds by phone, wire transfers by phone, and then use multi-factor authentication to keep our accounts locked down. Easy to set up and easy to use. And then just one more, and that is passphrases. And I'll give you one more example here. Remember how I told you we watched The Godfather as a kid growing up, right? And we watched it on Christmas Day, and we had tradition in my family. We watched this movie and we waited for a line in the movie. And then we took a break and we got out some cannolis and had some cannolis. The line we were looking for was this line in The Godfather: leave the gun, take the cannolis. And when we heard that line in the movie, my mom got out a box of cannolis and we celebrated Christmas in my family. I know it's weird, but anyway, so what's my password going to be for passphrase going to be for my favorite streaming service? I bet you can't guess what this is. Anyway, but my favorite streaming service is, the passphrase will be, leave the gun, take the cannolis. Just take out those spaces and there you go. See, you come up with passphrases and be creative that way. Anyway, I'm going to stop right there. If you need a book on cybercrime, I got one, and it's only on my website, which is right there. And if you want to go there, you can have a book sent out to you immediately, and it's only half the price of James Comey's book. So it's basically you can't afford not to have it. Anyway, stop right there. While we're lining up questions now, George, are there questions already in the queue?
Yes, there are already questions in the queue. Some of these we may be able to answer several of them kind of at the same time because they're all very similar. Number one, we'll get the handouts and we'll make those available via the website. So where you went to register, we'll have a link out there, but later as we kind of post the as well. So look out for the handouts. I think there were several folks that had that question. One question you kind of alluded to just a moment ago, which was don't forget the minors in your family. And so we had a couple of folks that asked the question about, do we set up the Social Security accounts for our minor children and at what age? Because as we all know, as soon as they're born, they're getting a Social Security number. And do we set it up then as an example to keep it from being stolen? So I think that was actually about 2 or 3 questions came in about that.
I think you have to wait till someone's 18 to set up their online Social Security account. But no danger of them being victimized because you can't generate Social Security benefits for a minor. But when they turn 18, you should set that up.
Okay, great. That's great. I remember it's just kind of like when they turn 18, you want to have those essential documents like, the power of attorney, the healthcare directives and those kinds of things, because now when they go off to college, you get that kind of protection as well. We also had a question here. Let's see here. Many systems today ask for your last 4 digits of your SSN. How secure is actually giving that to someone? And is it easy for technology to actually figure out the other numbers?
No, don't worry about giving the last 4. And it's overstated by the media. Don't worry about it. Give the last 4.
Okay, perfect. And are Apple computers any more protective than PCs? So we hear kind of some stories about that.
Generally, they're not the target of malware attacks because there's less of them out there. But they can get malware on a Mac. Just the same rules apply. Just be careful where you click and so forth. But they're generally safer than a Windows computer.
Okay. And when you're trying to detect the malware on your computer, are there specific recommendations that you have as far as do you use the standard software that kind of is built in? Do you recommend third party, or does it make a difference?
I like built in. Windows Defender, it works really, really well. I would use that on a Windows system. If you want an additional program, get the free version of Malwarebytes. Malwarebytes will scan for viruses in addition to Windows Defender. That's a 1-2 punch. It works really well. And then you can use Malwarebytes on a Mac too. So if you want to use that for that device.
Okay. I have a question here. How can I tell if advertising is a scam? If you order something and never goes beyond the money transaction, the website's very minimal, no contact information, that the kind of thing we look at, or? Oh,
absolutely. All the things that were just mentioned. You look for a legitimate site that'll have some aesthetic legitimacy to it. Contact information, someone, a help button, someone you can contact, a customer service, all that stuff. That I would look for all those things.
Yeah. I'll throw another one in there too. Names that sound like common store names too. They're very prolific on Facebook. They may sound like a major chain, but they're not part of the major chain. And then when this actually happened to us, it wasn't so much of a scam as much as it was we got bad product. So I guess it's a scam. But it was legitimate product, but you couldn't return it because it had to go overseas to return it. It cost more than the product
Right.
to send it back. It's really interesting. So what does a hacker gain from hacking your Facebook account? We hear a lot of that happening.
Just building a profile of you, getting information about you that if you're putting out there, first of all, or as a result of being hacked, they can get birth dates, and that's just part of the process of building a profile could use to steal your identity. But moreover than that is that then they can use your Facebook account to send messages to your friends that may have these links to them and send them to websites where they may try to sell them stuff or contain malware infested links that could infect people's computers. I think that's more so than the previous thing I mentioned about stealing identities.
Okay, that's really important to understand. Then, when you're looking at things that are being stored in the cloud versus hardware that's a backup device, you mentioned using both of those, kind of a 1-2 punch. Yeah. Is one better than the other, or are they maybe the same as far as security is concerned?
The general rule is, if you want to look at it this way, a photographer was once asked by somebody, true story. They said, if you lost all your wedding photos, what would you do? He goes, well, I have a backup rule, 3-2-1 backup rule. The 3-2-1 backup rule for us is you have basically three copies of your files in 2 different places and at least one that's off-site. So what I described was you have a hard drive that's in a different place, but it's on-site. You got the cloud, that's off-site. So just say something weird happens, right? You have disaster in your house and you have flood, you have a fire, God forbid it happens, but someone comes in and steals your computer and your hard drive. That's where the cloud backup comes in. That's why I recommend having it in both places. And if you think about family photos or tax returns or everything that's really important to you, have it in those different places. In the event of a weird thing happening, you'll be able to recover from one of those 2.
Right, because you could have it stored locally and end up with a major fire or flood or something like that, and then your local backup, which may be safe from hackers, is not safe from those kind of things.
That's great.
It's a really great point. When you are thinking or looking at the freezing the credit reports, I actually went through. It's interesting. I think I've hit everything that you talked about today in my own life. I've seen those emails. I've seen that on Facebook. It's amazing. But I actually had identity theft occur to me personally, and I had an unemployment claim. And in the state of Kansas, where there was, I think, tens of thousands of people that had this happen in the state of Kansas. And so one of the things that, I had the question about, which is one of our questions here, and that is, do you need to freeze credit report at all 4 agencies? And I did. I mean, I had to go to each one separately. I think you already mentioned that earlier. You have to go to each one separately and then freeze it at each one of those locations. And so that's really important. And it's really easy, to your point, it's very easy to lift, because I had to lift it because I don't remember what we were doing. We had to have it unlifted for some kind of credit check. And so it was very easy. Just went in and lifted it up, and it was perfect. It worked great. So I know that's easy to do. And that's also explained in your handouts when folks get that. But in addition to that, when you're looking at freezing credit report, I had another question here that I had not come across before. And that is, we have someone who set up their Social Security account, froze their credit reports, and then was told they couldn't access their Social Security online, and they had to send everything by paper. I never personally have encountered that, because I did freeze my credit reports and I still am able to access my Social Security account. So I didn't encounter that. Did that occur in the past? Maybe it's changed, or do you know anything about that?
Yeah, there's a sequence of things. The Social Security Administration won't let you create your online account if your credit reports are frozen. So you really want to do that. You want to do that first. And I think that is a relatively new thing. You may be able to lift the freezes to do the Social Security online, but just do them in that order: Social Security online, then freeze your credit reports.
Okay, it's a great point, because you're exactly right. When you set up a Social Security account, it goes through and validates who you are, because you're doing it online, and it will go to the credit bureaus to get the information to validate who you are. Right. And if you have a frozen credit report, then it won't be able to pull that information in to validate who you are. Once the account's set up, to your point, you should be fine, which is what I encountered as well. VPNs. Should I use a VPN to protect my computer?
You don't need it at home. If you have a Wi-Fi network at home with a strong password or phrase, and you have encrypted Wi-Fi, which you should have it based on the newer routers, it's all going to be encrypted. I don't think you need it at home, but you need it in public Wi-Fi settings. A VPN, virtual private network, piece of software that creates a network between a tunnel between your computer and the website you're communicating with in public places. It's essential for security.
Yeah, you did mention, I don't think specifically, but probably not a great habit. To your point, you're going to be on your coffee shop on a regular basis. Probably don't want to use their Wi-Fi necessarily. They're probably not the safest place to do that. Get your maybe hotspot via your phone, or to your point, get the VPN. Great points. LifeLock.
Yeah, let me actually have a slide on that, because this was a common question that I get, and the question is this. Let me just. If I freeze my credit reports, do I still need identity theft protection services like LifeLock? Right. And so the answer to the question, this is such a common question that I put a slide in about it because it always comes up. And the answer is basically to monitor financial accounts. Yeah, get LifeLock or another service. They monitor bank accounts, credit card sites. They do a whole suite of things, right? They also monitor the dark web for your information. Your social security numbers on the dark web, you probably want to know about it. LifeLock will check for that. They're also a resource for you. Yeah, LifeLock's good for that. And again, not just LifeLock, but other services. But what you don't need from LifeLock is credit monitoring, because freezing your credit reports is better than that. Freezing prevents the fraud. Monitoring just tells you when something has happened. It's usually too late. So, but if you want those other things, then I highly recommend LifeLock or other identity theft services.
Yeah, that's great. And there are limits to those. I know in my own personal situation, I did not know about my identity theft situation until after it had occurred. And I actually do have a monitoring service, to your point, to catch those things that my blind spots. But so it's a really great point. When hackers are coming in and they're getting, let's say they get our social security number and they're maybe gaining some information, are they going to be looking at people who have higher credit scores as targets more so than people with lower credit scores? Is there an argument to be say keep your credit score, in good shape? But is that higher risk?
I'm not sure that they even get the credit score if they have somebody social.
Got it.
They're not going to, because you got to get a credit score. That's another whole step in the process to get your credit scores. So they're just going to try to open up accounts. If it doesn't work for them because someone's got bad credit, then they'll go on to the next person.
Got it. Okay. It's all about the path of least resistance for them. They don't want to do a whole lot of effort to get there. They just want to get there, get in, get out, and go.
Right.
It sounds like. Okay. I think maybe one other question here. Is it a good idea to use different birth dates on accounts? And I think maybe what they mean that is than your own.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to do to make it so if someone gets it from one site, no, I don't know. No, I wouldn't do that, because then you got to keep track of the different birth dates that they may use to verify your authenticity on these different sites.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting point. So yeah.
I wouldn't put your real birth date on Facebook though. You want people to wish you a happy birthday, then pick a different birth date for that, because that again, if it's public, people say they have your birth date, and that's one step to stealing your identity. They need more than that, but they build a profile that way.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Really good point. Let's see here. Operating systems like Linux. Do you need antivirus on that, or is?
I don't. Linux is not a big target for criminals. Because a few people are using that.
Yeah.
But again, just because you're using Linux or Mac, it doesn't mean you can't be tricked into giving up your credentials. It may be safe from malware, those softwares and hardwares that I just mentioned, right? But you could still be tricked by giving it up yourself. So, social engineering can be used no matter what device you're on.
Got it. And I think the last question I have here is there a risk to actually answering the robocall, the no caller ID call?
I haven't got any solid information, evidence that it is. Okay. So some people say, hey, if you answer those calls, then they know that's a real number, and you're going to get more calls. But I don't think there's any evidence of that one way or the other. So I don't know. Okay. I think we got everything. Let me just double check here. We talked about that. Oh no, here was
this is the last question. How common is credit card fraud at retail outlets?
I don't have any number on that. I mean, you mean like using your credit card somewhere and then having somebody getting that information and then trying to use, make a fraudulent purchase?
I guess maybe it's yes, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's stealing the credit card information, you're using it at a retail outlet potentially, or they're, I don't know, permitting it. It's not real specific here. It just says how common is credit card fraud with retail outlets.
Well, that's one pathway for fraud. But I would just say on that point, I would not use debit cards as little as possible. Not at gas station pumps, because that's when skimmers can be installed easily. Someone gets your debit card information, They can drain your account dry. You won't even know it until maybe too late. So that's a big hassle to get money back. So credit cards, at least you're protected. No money's been taken until, you realize the fraud's occurred, and then you can get those charges reversed. So be careful with credit cards, debit cards. I mean, don't use debit cards in a restaurant where they take them away, at a gas pump or anywhere for that matter. I don't like debit cards at all because it's direct access to your bank account.
Okay. Well, hey, I know we went a little bit longer than our typical presentation, so I appreciate you staying on for an extra few minutes here. And sure. All of you, I appreciate you being on the call for that a little bit extra time as well, because we covered a lot of great information here. And we want to thank you for being on the call today. As always, we wanted to hear from you. Let us know how we're doing. So you can go to, leave us feedback at QA@marinerwealthadvisors.com. You can ask questions there, give us some feedback of how we did on the webinar today. We want to hear from you. So just keep us posted if you want to hear from any other topics. We look forward to seeing you on May the 10th as well, because Cozy Whitman from College Inside Track is going to be here. She's going to talk about how to conduct college searches in light of the COVID pandemic. Things are a lot different today than they were 2 years ago, and trying to get a really interesting time in and of itself, let alone when you're trying to do that from remote purposes or investigation from a remote way. So she's got a lot of great ideas. She'll share those on May the 10th. So Jeff, thanks so much for being here. It's been great to see you again, and look forward to the next time when I get to hear something new.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here.